Good evening, everybody.
Hello, hello, and welcome to the wonderful land of YouTube or possibly X, the platform formerly known as Twitter.
Indeed, yes, and yeah, I just saw your tweet. Yeah, welcome to another episode of Critique Corner with me, Daniel Parker.
Or me, DB Fastbinder, where we talk about, well, basically whatever we feel like.
Indeed, yes, and good to see you as always, Changus. Or not, sorry, Ninja. Sorry,
Man, we have two regulars, two and a half if you count D Rhino.
I know. I don't know why. I don't know why I can't keep him straight. And
Oh, hey,
and
Creators Outlet.
hey, creator. Hey, well, good to see you.
Hey to you too, nerd.
You're here. Well, if you are returning like Ninja and Careers Outlet, welcome back. If you're new, what we usually do is, although what we just started doing is we'll talk a little box office from the previous weekends, and then we get into our various reviews. And we got some pretty good ones to talk about this week.
Yep, we decided we were largely done with outrage unless it was actually something that was interesting. We'd rather just talk media.
Indeed, yeah. And so, with that said, time for box office.
So, of course, the biggest new release, in keeping with the spooktacular season of All Hallows Eve, on a
Yes.
Friday the 13th that happens to fall in October, is the most horrifying film of them all. Taylor Swift, The Eras Tour. A movie so big, or not a movie, a theatrical release so big that it scared The Exorcist out of the logical weekend to launch a horror movie.
Right. Yes. And I guess what all I can say is good for her.
Question mark?
Question mark. Yeah. I don't really I don't really care about anything to do with Taylor Swift. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like her more than Beyonce, but that's in a recent Twitter thing. They had the hard choices. Which creator and all of their music would you get rid of forever? There was Prince and
Oh
and
yeah.
a li- and Michael Jackson and
Yeah, Beyonce and then Whitney Houston.
Whitney Houston. That's right.
Yeah.
And I was like, can I delete Beyonce twice?
Yeah. Oh, not that's not the last one. It was a mutual of ours that he had to survive working at the movie theater during its run. Ooh.
It's like this. It's like a second wave of Barbie, I bet.
Yeah. Well, I had to work at a movie theater that showed Mamma Mia, so I feel their pain.
But so it opened to a $92 million opening. Now, part of my extensive research I did, by which I mean to open up Fandango and played around with it for about 5 minutes, because my fans only deserve the best.
Yes.
This isn't exactly an apples to apples comparison because this isn't a typical theatrical release. So the cost of a ticket for the same time period was roughly double. I decided to pick a random day for today and pretend I was going to either a uh, a 1 o'clock showing of this or a 2 o'clock showing of the new Leonardo DiCaprio movie, and it was $12 for the Leo movie and $20 for this.
Hmm.
So while that's like a very high per theater average, but doesn't necessarily mean more seats are being filled.
Right. Yeah.
I,
And I guess since it was directly Taylor Swift bypassed studios and just went straight to release it in AMC theaters, that she, I don't know, maybe her take home was a little bigger. Maybe that's why it cost more. I don't know. That's something. I don't know.
well, it's also it's also just a matter of it's worth the investment because I believe this particular concert series. This is the one where everyone earlier this year or late last year was complaining about Ticketmaster. There were so many people trying to log on and buy the tickets at the same time that uh, it was crashing everything. And there had congressional investigations looking into Ticketmaster and all their
Oh
shenanigans.
yeah. Yeah, I remember that now. Yeah.
So, uh, if you're a Swiftie who couldn't get a ticket normally, and you couldn't get it from all the scalpers, a
Mm.
double movie ticket is not an unreasonable price to pay to go to see it.
Yeah.
I mean, like on Tuesday night, I'm going to go see the K-pop group Stay C, and for a standing room only mosh pit of a concert venue, from what my friend described it as, I want to say it was like 100-ish a person after the various fees that were tacked on.
Wow.
So yeah, live music is expensive. So if you have this as a replacement good for that, don't undercharge for it.
Yeah.
Just for a little bit of perspective, because I couldn't remember. There have been so many bombs this year. I couldn't remember what the actual successful movies were making. Um, on the opening weekend for the year 2023, uh, it comes ahead of major movies like John Wick, um, Indiana Jones, Mission Impossible. It's right about neck and neck with Little Mermaid. The Little Mermaid pulled the clutch, or it
Yeah.
it pulled out a little bit.
Yeah. Mm.
So it's not. Yeah, it's just impressive.
Yeah.
Oh, AMC Theaters themselves is the distributor. Interesting. Okay,
Yeah. Huh.
as opposed to being Taylor Swift Inc. or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And I know that Beyonce either has or is going to do the same trick. So,
Oh yeah, I heard that
the,
too. Yeah.
so this, me and Tom over at Midnight's Edge keeps saying that the studios are going to realize they need the theaters more than the theaters need them.
Mm.
Because from the
Yeah.
theater's perspective, they don't care if they're showing a Taylor Swift concert, a classic movie, or a new movie, or a boxing match, or I've seen, or like a
Super
anime movie
Bowl.
festival. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, think about it. Like, there's some of those theaters like the Cinemark where you're basically sitting down in a big easy chair and having somebody bring you food. That would be a brilliant idea to have the Super Bowl uh, uh, that be streamed there.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Might even leave the lights on.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that we're going to see more of this because there's a level where there's a lot of people who are priced out of actually attending one of these concerts live.
Yeah.
But if you can just recreate the experience of the concert, then paying for a premium movie ticket becomes pretty sensible, especially because it takes advantage of the communal aspect of movie theaters.
Right. Yeah.
Because think how lonely it would be. Like, let's say that you bought this on PVOD or Blu-ray or something, or
Yeah.
streamed it on Netflix. That would be a lonely experience to be like watching somebody else's concert. But
Yeah.
you get 100 other Swifties in the theater with you.
Hmm.
It's a big communal event.
Yeah. It's like going to a screening of Rocky Horror Picture Show. You know.
Yep. It becomes a viable replacement for actually going to the concert. So
Right.
expect to see more of that, like
Yeah.
with some of these big groups, and even
Oh yeah.
small groups could benefit from it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Might have what do they call the BTS? The
Right.
Yeah.
Or like, yeah. Actually, that's a good example. Like that concert I went to for uh,
Uh,
oh, who is why is it escaping my mind? It's see the everyone at home. I'm not usually this forgetful. Thursday, I'm usually at my low energy because it's almost Friday
Yeah,
at my work week. Twice when I went to see twice,
yeah,
like if we couldn't have gotten tickets, and oh well, but a week later for $20 you can go down to your local movie theater and watch a video of the show taken
yeah,
by taken by a mix of drone cameras and whatnot. Then that would have been a decent alternative.
yeah.
Now, as far as actual movies, everybody stayed way clear of competing with Taylor Swift this weekend.
Yeah,
So we just have our returning champions.
yeah.
In its second weekend, The Exorcist Believer takes a 59% tumble.
Oof. Yeah,
Not terribly surprising.
This movie's getting really bad word of mouth.
Um, Although weirdly, its second weekend is ahead of Saw X's third weekend in terms of total gross, which I guess tells you the relative strength of the brand.
Yeah, yeah, and well, there hadn't been an Exorcist movie in like I don't know, like 15 years, I think.
Wait,
So
they were making Exorcist movies in the Bush administration?
yeah,
Huh.
it was a prequel. Um,
Okay.
they actually technically made two of them. One of them got a pretty big theatrical release, and then another one was just very limited.
Well, okay then. That goes to show my general ignorance of horror movies comings and goings. Because I had thought that there had been some in the '80s, but that it had been dormant since then.
You had the original, and then the sequel in the 70s.
Okay.
The first one was 73, and then the second one I want to say was 78 or 79, and that movie is just considered like the worst sequel ever made.
Yeah. I've heard bad things about that sequel.
Yeah, Richard Burton is in it, and apparently he only did it for the money. And
It,
yeah,
it reminds people asking, Ron Perlman, why are you in so many bad movies? Because my wife likes to buy shoes.
yeah, yeah, and then the third movie came out in '90 with George C. Scott. Which, if you haven't seen that movie, I would actually highly recommend it. It's
Okay.
really good. But and then they did a fourth. They did the fourth one, like I want to say late 2000s.
Okay.
But yeah,
Well, now I know more.
yes. Do, do, do,
Yeah.
do.
So you're also staying in there. Paw Patrol, considering it was a very cheap movie to make, probably cost more to advertise than to actually produce.
Yeah,
That's a good result. Uh, 3 weeks in, around $50 million. It's no Taylor Swift, but it's doing all right for itself,
oh yeah, yeah.
which is unfortunately more than you can say about our number 5 movie, The Creator.
Ooh,
32 million after 3 weeks. A new franchise. This is not.
no, yeah. That's uh, if they hadn't blown so much money on the marketing, they probably would have made their money back
In the long run, at least, yeah.
in the long run. Yeah,
The thing about that is that from reviews I've heard of it, it sounds like some of the people I watch were maybe giving it too much credit just because they were in love with the idea of it not being a remake or a sequel or something.
right. Yeah, and it was from the director of Rogue One.
The real director, not the replacement director, right?
Right. Yeah.
God, who at Disney went, I think it's totally fine that we can't make a Star Wars movie without swapping out the director. It's totally normal to have Colin Trevorrow lead the third movie, and what's his name leave Rogue One and
Yeah, and then
have to bring Ron Howard in after we've shot 90% of the movie
yeah.
because the people who shocker, the people who made the Lego movie and Clone High had a satirical take on it. Why weren't we paying closer attention to what
Yeah.
they were doing?
Jeez. We all know who that was. Her initials are KK.
Yep.
Yeah.
Kathleen Kennedy and her crew.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, jeez.
But enough about whipping the dusted corpse of Star Wars horse.
Yeah, he's already dead.
Stop. All right. The blind. I'm just
Blind.
being
Yeah.
weird. Um, for like a little Fathom Events face-based movie,
Yeah.
13 million after 3 weeks is not anything to sneeze at.
Yeah.
Haunting in Venice continues to be a rare dud of a horror movie, considering it isn't a horror movie.
Yeah.
The Nun is, after 6 weeks, looking very likely to end up being the top grossing horror movie of the season.
Oh wow.
It's sitting at 83 million, and with the types of legs we're seeing from The Exorcist and Saw X, I'm thinking that they aren't going to exactly catch up to it.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
Equalizer 3. Now we're into the less than $1 million in box office, which is just a sad state of affairs to still be in the top 10. And
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the the Disney re-release of Hocus Pocus is doing all right,
Yeah.
considering that it's just it's a 30-year-old movie.
Yeah.
Right? Average of 611 a theater. That's 611 more than they would have made without them in there.
Yeah.
And just as the after a month in theaters, Expendables is sandwiched between Barbenheimer
Oh.
in terms of its box office. So enormous bomb.
Yes. I think it's safe to say we will not be having any more Expendables movies.
No. Yeah, I think it's the one time when the gender bent version would have actually made more sense, just because it
Yes.
would have been different.
Indeed. Yeah.
But I think those are the movies that are really worth about talking about.
Yeah.
That are worth talking about. So let's talk about a movie that probably is also not worth talking about, The Marvels. Because we have Box Office Pro's long range projections, which are based on their algorithm and based on pre-order activity.
Yeah.
So for a movie that, according to behind the scenes things released by people like Valiant Renegade, among others, a $300 million price tag.
Oh.
I believe before marketing.
Oh. Why?
I don't know. I hope that whoever managed to get their yacht bought on the studio's dime and claimed it was special effects is very happy with themselves. I'm sure they are because they got a yacht out of it. So
Yeah.
we are looking at an opening weekend range of 50 to 75 million.
Ooh.
I actually have a feeling that that's overstating it.
I think so too. Yeah.
I mean, you remember that I think that even the Flash had estimates that of like 100 million up until very shortly before it's released, and they had the full numbers.
Yeah, and we all know how that turned out.
Yeah. We're also looking at a possible total domestic run of 121 to 189 million.
I don't think it's going to get that high.
121 million maybe.
Yeah.
But okay, so let's go into the Wayback Machine. Let's look at a comparable contemporary from earlier this year. Remember when Ant-Man and the Quantumania actually looked intriguing based on that first trailer with
Yes.
like where it had like a moral dilemma for Scott Lang, and
Yeah, yeah, and
it looked
then
kind of cool, and Bill Murray was featured prominently. And
yeah.
they did that thing they do to trick people into going to the theaters, where they pair it with a classic rock song,
Oh, yes. Yeah.
and then
Uh,
nobody, and then some people fell for it the opening weekend, and then it just off a cliff.
yeah. Jeez. Ninja says he did a paint job of the Miss Marvel miniature from Marvel Crisis Protocol. Made some improvements, in my opinion.
But the low end of that projection would have it being about 90 million less than Ant-Man, which in
Yeesh.
theory cost less to make. I say in theory because we always are finding out that they lied about it afterwards.
Yeah. 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 It's gonna be. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if. Uh, oh, there it
That,
is. Oh, there she.
yep. Yeah, it
Very.
looks pretty nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Very. Very good, Ninja.
But but there's more embarrassment tied up in this. Or I should say, why is it so low?
Hmm.
What's getting in its way?
Um. Two words. Brie Larson.
That is a major contributing factor
Yeah.
because, rightly or wrongly, deservedly or not deservedly, she has a reputation. Eh,
Yes.
There is a sizable portion of the fan base who do not like her and would not go see anything with her in it.
Yes. And as we all know, if we go back in the way back machine to 2019, when Captain Marvel came out, and they're like, "Oh, you have to see this movie," it was sandwiched in between Infinity War and Endgame, and you had to see Captain Marvel to know what was going to happen in Endgame, and that turned out to be BS.
Yeah, I've heard scuttlebutt that um, that they had a version of a Endgame that did actually have her more prominently, and they didn't go with it based on reaction to the character.
Uh,
I don't know how true that is. Actually, we do have that tell-all book about the reign of the Marvel movies that
um,
came out recently. That might be worth picking up as an Audible book or something, just to get some insight.
yeah, 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 that's actually, yeah, that's a good idea. I may pick that up too. Um,
But yeah, so yeah, that movie benefited from a lot of. It benefited from a good mood actually, because at the time everybody was high on the awesomeness that was Infinity War,
yeah,
and just that, oh, what are they going to do next? Oh, I got to see who this Captain Marvel is, and why are they in the '90s, and what the hell is a flirkin?
yeah,
Yeah, wait, that's how they destroyed. That's how Nick Fury lost his eye. He didn't wash out a cat scratch
yeah,
like an idiot.
yeah. Jeez. And Ninja says the only reason he would go see Marvels is for Miss Marvel, because apparently her actor is the only one who's excited to play a superhero. Yeah, that's what I've heard. Yeah, she's very she's the only one who seems to be enjoying her role in the movie.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so let's be honest here. Monica Rambeau, as presented in WandaVision,
Mm,
is a nothing character.
yes.
Like, she had a good initial scene dealing with the blip,
Hmm.
and then she was just stoic, strong person.
Yeah, and yeah, she really added nothing to that TV show.
No, that's kind of where you see the peak. This builds into that, builds into that, builds into that
Mhm.
destruction of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Right. Yeah.
And this is really where the chickens come home to roost because like introducing Kang in Loki was a stupid idea. Uh,
Hmm.
I think it's because Disney assumed that, well, of course, we're Disney. People are going to flock to Disney Plus, and we're going to actually have more people watching our Marvel derived TV shows than are going to the theaters. So, of course, we can just tie them together and have them interweave and everything.
Yeah. And then they quickly realized that wasn't the case because, well, they're bad TV shows.
All right, there is that major disadvantage.
Yeah.
From everything I've heard, people like Loki the best. It's mostly on the strength of Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson.
Mm. Yeah, I can see that.
There are some people I've met who have fond feelings about WandaVision. My sister actually likes She-Hulk, but I think it's because she is very narrowly in the target demographic of it. Like,
Ah,
that move that has such a very tight focus on who it wanted to be for,
uh,
and traditional comic book fans is not it.
ah. And yeah, and I've heard Hawkeye was okay.
And my parents actually watched that and enjoyed it. It sounds like if there was one to watch, it would be Hawkeye.
Yeah.
But I heard mixed things about Moon Knight.
Yeah,
But
me too.
there hasn't been a One Piece or a Stranger Things out of the Marvel TV shows where it's just like, oh, this is must see TV. And it's just accessible and fun, and
Right. Yeah.
people even remotely interested in in the genre will enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah, Ninja said the same thing about Moon Knight, and he said even with the differences from the source material.
Yeah. So yeah, so I think we were talking earlier about obviously before the show we were talking about Disney's dumb history with the video game development, where it feels like looking at their history, they go through cycles. Oh, well, we should make video games because video games are the next big market. Oh, making video games is kind of difficult and expensive. We should just license out our IP and let other people make the video games. Huh.
Mhm.
Other people are making a lot of money off of video games with our IP. We should bring development back in house.
Yeah.
That game didn't do too well. I guess we should go back to licensing.
Yeah.
It feels like Disney is kind of hitting a similar stage right now with their whole idea that the TV shows and movies need to be tied at the hip, and that people will watch it because it's Disney, no matter what quality we give.
Yeah, yeah.
Turns out, no.
No, yeah.
You can fool people for a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, it's like the series where the opening box office isn't so much a statement on the quality of the movie itself, because who knows what the quality of the movie is until they've seen it. It's on the quality of what the last thing was,
Right.
which is
Yeah.
partially why DC's strategy of releasing all of these major bombs back to back to back to back to back in the course of a single year just to shove them out the door, ultimately very brand damaging.
Yeah.
What I actually kind of hope for them is that this year makes Zaslav go, hey, Gunn, yeah, you aren't getting shit until you prove to me that you can actually make a successful Superman movie.
Yeah. That's-
No Creature Commandos, no second season of Peacemaker.
yeah, yeah. We want Superman. I want a good Superman movie right now. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, so we'll see how this projection goes. I would not actually be surprised if we were looking at like a $30 million opening on this one. I don't know. For some reason, that number gets my gut, or it feels right in my gut.
Yeah, I would say that's probably about right. 30, 35. Yeah.
I mean, Flash opened to 55, and that wasn't actually that might be a decent barometer for what happens when you have a failed character. Actually, actually no, the Flash is a beloved character. There's never okay. Carol Danvers in the comics was a fine character. she was never actually popular.
Right. Yeah.
Like Chris Claremont kept bringing her into the X-Men, partially because he had written her as Ms. Marvel, and it's like he had an affection for the character.
Yeah.
But there was a reason they sacrificed her to build up Rogue's character arc.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, like if the Flash opens to that, weakened by a controversial actor, yeah, maybe 30, 40 million isn't entirely out of keeping.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 40 million. We'll see how wrong I am in a few weeks.
Yeah.
With our history of predictions, it'll hit 120. Just watch.
Yeah. Yeah. Knowing our luck. Yeah.
Oh well, that's why we don't make our money betting on box office openings.
Yes. Oh, Ninja. Why you got to bring that? Why you got to mention
No,
that?
we don't talk about that sickness in this house.
No.
They went right from Avengers 199 to 201. What are you talking about? Shut up.
Yeah.
It was an editorial oversight.
Yes. Indeed.
All right. Speaking of oversights, the new Frasier show.
Yes.
And when I say oversight, it's like, wait, they actually like made a sitcom in the year of our Lord 2023.
Yes.
Is that allowed?
Yeah. I guess so.
So Daniel, you've watched a lot more Frasier than I have. I might have caught a couple of episodes back when it was current,
Yeah.
and at least to my ears, whenever I hear Kelsey Grammer, I keep expecting him to threaten Bart and Lisa Simpson.
Yeah. Hello, Bart.
Hello, Bart. Especially Bart, but especially Lisa.
Yes. Yeah. So Frasier as a character, yeah, he started out on Cheers,
Hmm.
and then they spun it off into his own show, which was originally in Frasier. Okay, so Cheers was set in Boston, and then Frasier was set in Seattle.
Hmm.
And Seattle was his hometown, and he had a radio show there. He's a psychiatrist,
Hmm.
and he had a kind of like a Dr. Laura type show, and so the whole crux of that show was he had to live with his father. His father was a cop, got shot in the hip, and that's why he walked around with a cane. And then of course the other cast of characters included Fraser's brother Niles, and then his father's live-in physical therapist Daphne, who's British. She's from Manchester, and Niles so long story short, Niles and Daphne by the end of the show they end up getting married and they had a kid, and their kid by the way is a character in the show,
Yep.
uh, uh, David. I think they named him after David Hyde Pierce who played Niles.
Okay.
Um, and then the last episode of the show also saw his dad getting remarried, and then Frasier actually moving off to Chicago because he got a new girlfriend that he wanted to be with, and that's part of the crux of the show was he was very unlucky in love. He never could, he was already divorced, and he has a son, his son Frederick or Freddie, and that was basically the whole thing was him. And every time he would get a new girlfriend, what would happen? The biggest flaw of his is he's a very smart guy. He's very intellectual, very brilliant,
Hmm.
but that intellect gets in the way a lot. Like he overthinks things, and so that overthinking ends up just completely ruining a lot of those relationships. Um,
Okay.
yeah,
That seems to have transferred to his son in this show.
yes, and and it, I will say my favorite type of Frasier episode because they're obviously different types of, these long running sitcoms. There's usually like three or four different types of episodes. My favorite type of episode is when Frasier and Niles are trying to do something that's completely out of their wheelhouse, out of their knowledge,
Mhm.
and it just turns into an absolute disaster.
Okay, so like you have these two high class Harvard elite people who
Yeah.
like yeah, I could see a lot of funny scenarios you could put them in.
Oh yeah, yeah. And but yeah, so that's basically that was basically the old Frasier show, and then this show picks up, in modern day. Frasier's back in Boston for he's doing a guest lecture for another Harvard professor who's his friend from college, and he's there with his nephew. And his by the way, like the little eccentricities with his nephew. There's that was Niles. He's is so like father like son with those two. Um, and
And they have a new character whose name I forget, who's a teacher at Harvard.
that was Frasier's friend. I can't remember.
He wasn't in this. That was one of the questions I had. Is he wasn't a returning character from the sounds of it?
No, the only returning characters would be Frasier and I guess his son, because his son was in a few episodes, but obviously played by child actors. Um, let's see, what's
And
his
they
name?
didn't track down that exact same child actor 27 years or 20 odd years later.
I know, I know.
So,
Just
such inconsistency.
I know, I know. Alan is the British guy. Yeah,
Okay.
his yeah, and then yeah,
Yep. So as a sitcom, this show has a few vectors. Like if I say vectors, I mean like it's got a few engines to bring up drama.
yeah,
So first off, it's Frasier and his estranged son connecting
mhm, yeah,
because his son had gone to Harvard but dropped out,
mhm,
and it was an embarrassment to the old man because he was, a highfalutin type, and his son just wanted to be a fireman.
yeah,
Um, Now there was one thing I thought they were going to get into that they actually didn't, because we're going to spoil the first episode to kind of talk about the show as a whole,
yeah, yeah,
because it's a sitcom. It's not about the plot; it's about the presentation and jokes.
right, yeah,
Um, so he shows up at his son's place, goes in, and there's an attractive woman there,
mhm,
who he finds out he's living with, and he assumes that they're dating,
mhm,
and they're they meet, and he leaves, and she's like, "When are you going to tell him about John?"
yeah,
And he was on, Daniel was on Discord. I was just rolling my eyes in the back of my head. Oh God,
yeah,
yeah, the son is going to be gay, and Frasier isn't going to be cool with that, or he's going to have to be, or it's going to be a conflict for reasons. Then I thought to
yeah,
myself, wait a second, Frasier is like a Harvard educated
yeah,
um, hoity-toity type who felt comfortable moving from Boston to Seattle. Like,
yeah,
where's going to be there's not going to be a conflict there. Turns out that John is actually the infant son of the roommate and her deceased husband,
yeah,
who was another firefighter who had died.
yeah, and he's they decided to live together to cut down on their expenses, and yeah, and of course, yeah, there's a whole thing going on in in the episode where they're trying to keep the baby away from, keep Frasier from seeing the baby, and then of course Frasier finds out and he automatically assumes that's his grandson.
Wait, which is probably why they were trying to keep the baby away from him anyway.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because like he wasn't originally coming back to Boston, really. He was really just passing through on his way to Paris.
Yeah.
But by the end of the episode, he ends up sticking around to be with his son.
Yeah, and yeah, the other part of it too is the head of the psychology department at Harvard really wants Fraser to teach there.
Yep. Yeah. So those are like the conflict factors. Is he going
Right.
to teach at Harvard? Will he and his son reconnect? and what's going to happen with the woman and her baby.
Yeah.
Um, I would say that the son is actually kind of the weak point of the first episode, and still somewhat weak in the second.
Yeah. They we were talking about this before the show. They were obviously trying. They're obviously replaced his father with his son, because his father in the original show was very much like that. He was, he was a beer drinker, and he liked
Yeah.
sports, and he was, just kind of the man's man. He wasn't really about the highfalutin hoity-toity lifestyle of Frasier and Niles.
I'm
Uh,
guessing Frasier got this from his mother or something.
yeah, they got it from their mom. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So, yep. That all tracks. The stuff with the nephew was good. I actually really liked the stuff with the British friend who was the Harvard teacher, because they kept making jokes about him not doing anything because he was tenured, and
Yeah.
him being kind of a basket case. And
Yeah. 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 He never goes to never does goes to class. He just lets his TA do it,
yep,
and what I like too is their boss. She's very how what's the word, neurotic.
yeah, like very insistent that yes, these people are going to teach for her.
Yeah, and she's trying to one up her sister, who was already provost at Yale, and she
Yes.
she she wants to be a provost at a younger age than her sister. Yeah.
Yep. So they've already set up some good conflicts there. You have the nephew who's just kind of the wacky one
Hmm.
functionally.
Yeah, and he fills in the role of his father. Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, the Fraser's son is just kind of he just isn't the actor isn't. I think it's partially because he hasn't been given a lot outside of a little bit of model and drama.
Yeah.
There aren't a lot of jokes around him yet. Second episode improved that a little bit, I think, because like the bit where he was having to explain why he told his friends that his father had he had did he say his father had died, or that he never knew who his father was?
And that he had died, I think. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and what's funny about that, what gets me is, Frasier was upset about that, but Frasier did the same thing on Cheers. He told everybody that his father was dead, and then in one episode of Frasier, I can't remember who it was. One of the people from Cheers came for a visit, and he said, and they're like, "Yeah, he actually said you were dead," and his dad's like, "You told him I was dead."
So they turned a continuity flub into an episode.
Yes.
Yeah. So as far as where the shows go, oh, and as far as like the presentation, uh, we haven't talked much about Fraser himself. It's Kelsey Grammer. He's always going to turn in a good performance.
Oh yeah, yeah. And he is Frasier. It's not yeah, he's Frasier Crane. He isn't Frasier Johnson.
Yep.
This
He's
isn't yeah,
Jake Skywalker.
right. Yeah, they didn't do that with him. They're staying true to the character, which is a breath of fresh air, given how a lot of legacy characters from other franchises have been treated over the last few years.
Yep.
Yeah.
So he's almost not worth talking about, besides the fact that he's great. But
Yeah, yeah.
uh, I also had forgotten how much I hated laugh tracks.
Yeah. I don't like them either. They tend to be very distracting.
Yeah. So on a but so as I like, would I continue watching it? If I do, it'll be for the strength of the school shenanigans and Frasier himself, the nephew
Yeah.
for to a lesser extent.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. And yeah, hopefully they'll do more with his son. Give him.
Yeah. Also, I never really watched Cheers, but you know that they're going to anybody who's still alive is going to get a cameo on the show at some point.
Yeah. Um yeah, I wouldn't I would love to see George Wendt in that episode. Hey, Norm.
Uh, That Yeah, of course, if they do that, they have to make some sort of joke about everybody knowing his name somewhere.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. They might and they may at some point bring in BB Newirth, who played she's Frasier, the ex-wife, Frasier's ex-wife, and
Mm,
Freddie's mother. So
okay, yeah, that would make sense.
yeah.
Yeah, they've got a lot of angles to play here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, if this sounds interesting, it's on Paramount Plus, which I, I, it keeps being my favorite streaming service. I don't know how or why.
Yeah, I don't know either. They just they
It keeps working out. I come up with random old movies I want to watch, and they're on Paramount Plus.
yeah.
Like even things recommended by totally unrelated YouTube channels.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
speaking of things that, okay, no, nobody actually recommended this particular movie. Disney's
Yes.
The Haunted Mansion.
Yes. I gave this a watch because as somebody who was a regular visitor to Walt Disney World Resort, and I've been on the Haunted Mansion ride more times than I can count. Um, you know, wanted to see what they did with this.
Hmm.
Um, and I actually I talked to my mom about it yesterday because I had lunch with my parents, and she watched it too. And the word she used to describe it was cute.
That's damning with faint praise.
Yes, she because mainly because they had all the references to the ride. She thought that that was kind of cute, but the rest of it was just eh. Um, which I would agree with. It's just kind of nah. Um, I would so when I was watching it, it dawned on me with all the different characters. I think they were trying to do like a movie like Clue or Murder by Death.
Mm.
Having a bunch of people in a mansion, and then having kind of like a mystery, and although albeit with in this case with a supernatural bent to it, but it just didn't work. Like the humor by and large was pretty flat. Um,
Yeah, they've been showing this. They've been showing me a lot of Disney Plus ads on YouTube before I finally caved and re-upped my premium subscription because I couldn't handle it anymore. And because Google did actually roll out that, oh, using an ad blocker on your PC is in violation of YouTube's terms of service. Turn it
Ugh,
off, or like, okay, fine. I was thinking
yeah.
about it anyway. But the one the ad they were showing for this movie over and over again was them doing a séance with a candle and the medium going, "And you're sure that this Yankee vanilla candle is the only candle that was available? I keep forgetting to cancel my Amazon subscription." And silence.
Yeah.
It's like that's barely a joke.
Yeah, that's about the extent of the humor. Yeah, and
Oof.
there's also a bit in there that a lot of people kind of got some people got bent out of shape about, but I took it a different way. And
Mhm.
it's where they're scene where the basically the main character of the movie, he's up in the attic, and if you've been on the ride, and there's a part where you're in an attic, and it's the bride, and it shows her with the portraits of all her husbands that she um and she's up there, and then he's up there with her, and he's like, oh, I'm sure all those all of your husbands were real bad guys. I'm an ally, and and my my I interpreted that as he's saying that because he's trying not to get his head cut off.
Yeah.
Not he wasn't pushing any kind of they weren't pushing any kind of gender or anything. It was just like he's just saying that because he doesn't want to get his head cut off.
Right. He's saying something that he thinks will placate somebody dangerous.
Right. Yeah. And but yeah, so basically the crux of the movie is Rosario Dawson's character and her son move into a mansion north of New Orleans, which turns out to be haunted.
Wait, Ahsoka herself?
Yes, yeah, Ahsoka herself. Yeah, they. these actors must have signed some contract with Disney that they have to do like a certain amount of
Oof.
projects with them. Because Owen Wilson's in this movie too, and he's in
Oh
Loki.
no.
Yeah. But yeah, so they leave the mansion, but they can't. They actually they leave the mansion, but then they have to go back because this was part of the ride. And I will say, I will give them credit. This was clever because it's part of the lore of the ride. Uh, when you're getting about to get off the ride and near the end, the tour guide, quote unquote, tells you, beware of hitchhiking ghosts, and then they tells you that a ghost will follow you home. And so when you go into the mansion and then you leave, one of the ghosts follows you and then starts haunting you. So that's why they can't leave the mansion, because even if they leave the mansion, they're still going to be haunted by some ghost that's living inside the mansion.
Well, okay then.
Yeah.
I just don't really have a lot of response to this movie. Like it,
Okay.
like
but
it,
yeah, it's, I mean, a lot of it is just centered around the basically the main character of the movie, because they have this whole he has this whole tragic backstory with his wife dying, and all that. Yeah. I would say even Owen Wilson's wasted in this movie. Like, I don't know how you do that, but they found a way.
wow.
Wow. He doesn't say wow, by the way.
Well, man, he really is wasted in this movie.
I know,
So,
yeah.
so
Um,
having never seen it, did you ever see the Eddie Murphy Haunted Mansion?
I haven't seen that one, no.
Okay, so you can't make a comparison.
No.
It's the real question is why did they think this was a good idea after the first one was a famous mega bomb? Did they blame Murphy because he was at the Norbit and Pluto Nash part of his career?
Probably. Yeah, I don't know. I yeah, I can't help you there. It's, I mean, I think the only thing, like I said, if they had leaned more into the whole, making it be more like a Clue type movie, I think it would have worked, or at least been a little bit better. Um, but the thing with that is, with Clue, and also, if you've I don't know, if you ever seen Murder by Death?
Yeah, it's been a while, but
Okay.
yeah, it had the original Obi-Wan in it as like a deaf, but as a deaf
Uh,
butler, and or no,
yeah.
no, he was actually
He was
he was
blind.
blind, and the maid was deaf, and they couldn't
Right.
deal with each other.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The thing with those two movies is that everybody in that house is in that house for a reason. Like, there's a tangential reason why they're all there. This movie, it's just like they're just there.
Also, everybody in those first two movies is larger than life and kind of absurd, so which plays into the fun of it.
Yeah, and the only one and the only two, well, the only people in this movie that would be, you would call larger than life, would be like Owen Wilson. I can't remember her name. The Whoever played the voodoo priestess, and Danny DeVito. But even Danny DeVito was kind of wasted in this movie too.
And if you can't at least get Jumanji 2 got a good performance out of Danny DeVito, even though half the time he was played by Aquafina,
Yeah,
doing her best Danny DeVito impression.
yeah. But yeah, this movie was very disappointing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'll let you know, you're not the only one dealing with disappointment this week,
Oh, really?
because I read Otaku Elf. For my birthday, I got a large pile of manga
Mm.
that I've been neglecting, so I've been making an effort to read through it.
Okay.
Otaku Elf is one of those cute girls doing cute things anime. Um,
Yeah.
which in this case, the premise is that in this that there's this Shinto shrine in the city, and it's famous because of the goddess who lives there. Well, the goddess is actually an elf, and it's unclear if she like a European elf, and it's unclear if she's from an alternate universe, or if this is just a universe where elves live in the shadows, or what.
Uh,
But she's extremely agoraphobic, so she's been basically living rent free in this Shinto shrine for centuries. And the girl on the left here, whose name I read a dozen times last night and is completely escaping me. She's like the new shrine maiden. She's kind of spunky and fun, but
yeah.
not very memorable outside of that. Um, I had actually seen the first episode of it, so I actually ended up skipping the first few chapters because that first episode was you ever it's actually very hard for me to want to read a manga where I've seen the anime and it is a one to one because
Yeah.
this that one part of the advantage of manga has over American comics that they treat the manga like a storyboard for the anime, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I've basically already seen the full version of the story. I was like, okay, I'll just skip ahead until it doesn't look familiar, which was about chapter 4 out of 10.
Yeah.
Um, and then it was just cute girls having conversations about food, and the elf painted Gundams. And these little asides, which are the elf and the girl talking about what happened in the chapter,
Yeah.
with what happened being a very generous way of describing it, um, was probably the most amusing part of things. Because, they got into this very weird conversation that I couldn't really follow because they never really defined what these two types of local cuisine they were discussing were.
Oh.
Let me give you an example. Daniel, Tim's Cascade potato chips have really gone downhill since I was a young man. The difference is that it's a type of, actually, no, I can't define it for you. They used to use peanut oil to fry these chips, but they switched over to canola oil at some point, and the flavor just hasn't been the same ever since. Now,
Uh,
what I really should have said was Tim's Cascade because that Tim's Cascade potato chips you can gain context, right? What I
right.
should have said was Tim's Cascades has really gone downhill ever since they switched from peanut oil to vegetable oil. It just hasn't been the same. You'd be like, Tim's Cascade, what?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Which are a regional potato chip brand up here in the Seattle area and
Uh,
Washington State in general.
yeah.
Um, that's what came to mind as I was reading that was trying to it was just such inside baseball, and they never actually really defined what the food was because in the original Japanese they wouldn't have to.
Right. Yeah. So is this kind of like a reverse isekai sort of thing?
Unclear. I don't know if this just happens to be a world where elves exist, or if she's a transplant from another universe.
Okay.
But what I'll say is that the humor doesn't really land, and there isn't really a story engine per
Mm,
se. The best you get out of it is the shrine maiden is vaguely embarrassed uh, by the by the otaku antics of the elf who is into a bunch of nerdy hobbies. Oh, I told you not to paint your figurines in the shrine. It's the whole area stinks like model paint. Well, such conflict. I think that's
yeah.
the thing. Is that there's no conflict in this story. Like what they really needed was to you could have had that set up, but it could have been like say, oh well, the otaku elf is tired of hiding in her place all the time, and she's going to go to school with the shrine maiden,
Yeah. Yeah.
eh, and the problems that causes, or I don't know, the otaku elf. Gets a summon from her king, and but she's too afraid to face her king and have to explain where she's been the last few hundred years. So she brings the shrine maiden with her back to another world.
Yeah.
The closest we get to a setup for a conflict is on the last couple of pages. This dark elf girl shows up,
Uh,
but I've read enough of these series to know that that just means that you're going to have another character to be embarrassed, to either cause the shrine maiden to be embarrassed at her antics, or to also be embarrassed at the low key antics of the otaku elf.
so it's very much slice of life.
Yes, and it's slice of life I can't really relate to. Like I've in the past jokingly rated things on a weeb scale of 1 to anybody can understand it to a 5 of haha, they used a slightly different character for that word, changing the pronunciation, which is a reference to a classical Japanese poem that every school child learns.
Yeah.
Yeah, very droll.
Yeah.
I would call this a 3, maybe like a low 4.
Okay.
Which if you're exceeding my otaku-ness, then you're in trouble. Um,
Yeah.
so I cannot give this a recommend, unfortunately.
Oh, well. Yeah.
You,
Can't win them all, I guess.
yep, win some, lose some.
Mm.
But but thankfully, it seems like we have saved the best for last in the form of
Yes.
Simpsons Halloween special Treehouse of Horror retrospective,
Yes. Yeah. We watched the 1 through 5.
which covers
Uh,
Simpsons seasons 2 through 6.
yes. And of course, the image that the DB has chosen is probably one of the best ones.
Yep.
Where's the dolls trying to kill me, and the toaster's been laughing at me.
So I've mentioned recently that I just don't have whatever gene makes you appreciate horror. I wonder if The Simpsons partially inoculated me from being able to find horror anything but either annoying or kind of funny.
Probably, yeah, yeah, because they spoof um, just about every horror genre and and popular horror movie you can think of.
Yeah, it is kind of funny watching these. How I always thought just watching them up when I got the DVD collections that they weren't that extreme, but if you watch them kind of all in a row like this, it's like, yeah, okay, I can see why back when The Simpsons was mostly watched by children or often watched by children, they felt the need to have Marge come out and tell people to put their kids to bed before they got horrified.
Right? Yeah,
Because there's some stuff you wouldn't necessarily want the kiddos to watch.
yeah, like the one with like when Mr. Burns rips Homer's brain out of his head and sticks
Yes.
it in a giant robot.
Yeah. Or when the fog turns them inside out
Oh yeah,
and they're inside out and there's blood splattering everywhere.
yeah, or the groundskeeper Willie keep getting an axe in the back. Like,
Yep.
oh, I'm bad at this.
So to avoid just sitting here spouting Simpsons quotes at each other and giggling helplessly,
Yeah,
uh, uh, which we could do honestly do for an hour. Like anybody who grew up on The Simpsons has those burned into his head so badly that I do have friends to this day where like I'd say a third of the things we say to each other are Simpsons quotes.
yeah, yeah. Same here.
So Dan, what would you say are your like top 2 or 3 out of the selection we watched?
Hey, so top tier there. Okay, well, this one I would probably put in there where the cursed crusty doll. Uh, which it does it comes with that free Frogurt. Oh, that's good.
The Frogurt contains potassium benzoate.
That's bad.
Um,
Um,
Having watched the commentary for that, apparently, if you watch the Homer's lip sync in that bit, it's
yeah,
kind of weird looking. It doesn't actually match what the word being said.
yeah.
When they said that whenever they have a joke like that and the animation goes kind of weird, you can kind of tell that they were having to buy time in the episode because it came up short.
Oh, yeah. Or having Kang and showing Kang and Kodos laughing, and the
Yeah,
laugh is just a little too long. Yeah,
yeah. That's them buying time.
yeah.
Because I've heard them talk about how these Treehouse of Horror episodes are very hard to time because you actually have to, you're not just making one episode, you're making 3 episodes.
Right. Yeah, and the 3 short episodes. Yeah. Um, which means the stories are condensed down. I was trying to think of another one early. Probably the Shinning is another one I really
Uh,
liked.
a fine choice.
Yeah.
Hey,
Well,
Marge, I've been working on something.
Yeah.
It goes all
No,
beer and no
no,
beer
no,
and no
no
TV
TV.
makes Homer something something.
Go crazy. Don't mind if I do. Yeah. Yeah, because whenever, like in my family, whenever we talked about, if we talk about The Shining, we always said we call it the shinning.
As well you should.
Yes. And what's interesting is if you watch that episode and you watch The Shining, it's actually a pretty accurate spoof of the movie. Like they do a pretty good job of taking each sequence of events in the movie. Even
Yeah,
yeah,
matching the camera angles and
oh yeah, and even the scene when like when Marge locks Homer in the pantry, which I mean that happens in the movie, and then the ghosts are talking to Homer. That happens in The Shining, where the ghosts are talking to Jack Nicholson. They're like, we're not sure you're entirely committed to this,
can't talk eating.
Yeah.
One thing that kept coming up, it happened at least twice, was Burns going to Smithers. Well, if I'm wrong, I owe you a Coke, or
Yes.
I owe you a Coke. Apparently, that's one of his catchphrases.
Yeah. He did that. Yeah, in The Shining, where he's like, well, if we come back and the family's been slaughtered, I owe you a Coke.
And then it was also like, oh, that body was alive when they're in the robot brain episode. Like, I guess I owe you a Coke.
Yes. Well, the other one too with the Shining was that when Mr. Burns is showing them through the hotel, and he said, "This hotel is built on an Indian burial ground and was the site of satanic rituals and witch burnings and 5 John Denver Christmas specials."
John Denver.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's your third?
Third one would probably be it's a toss up between the zombie one and then the gremlin on the bus.
Oh yeah. The Gremlin on the Bus was one of the earlier ones.
Yeah, and that was of course that's a spoof of the Twilight Zone episode with William Shatner where he's on the plane.
There's something on the wing.
There's just something on the wing, and they actually redid that segment in the Twilight Zone movie with John Lithgow
Hmm.
uh, in the Shatner role. It was actually I'd say it was actually better than in the TV show one, but
Honestly, not surprising.
yeah. Um, but and then yeah, then the zombie one just has so many great lines in it. It's like
Flange the zombie.
wait, he was a zombie. What killed me was when Bart's doing the chants are all just names of stuff like it was game show hosts
Yeah.
and then department stores. Well, and then the last
Condom
one,
brands.
condoms. Yes.
Magnum Trojans.
Chic. And he's wearing the album cover from Michael Jackson's Thriller on his head.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's hear. So for my top three, uh, I'm pr- I'm gonna have to agree with you on the Shinning.
Mhm.
Um, I'm gonna, just for the reasons said above. Um, I'm gonna go with. I might actually go with King Homer, the King Kong parody.
Oh yeah.
He's got a lot of great lines, like Mr. Burns, or not Mr. Burns, Mr. Smithers going in, "Women and semen don't mix."
Like, I just liked when he eats Shirley Temple.
Yeah. On the good ship, lollipop. Rawr, rawr. Yeah, that was full of great lines and just bits about it. It's a kind of a Mr. Burns tour de force because
Yeah.
and they pointed at. I remember listening to the commentary. That was always something that had bothered them about the movie in the last act. Like, what was the King Kong show actually? Were they going to like just sit there and watch him struggle in the chains for hours on end?
Yeah.
their theory was that people were hoping that he would escape, and that was the show. Because otherwise it would just be kind of dull.
Yeah.
Um, I forget who it was, but after Homer falls to the earth, is he dead? No, no, says Mr. Burns, but his career is.
Oh yeah.
Uh, After Al Jolson had one too many and climbed the Chrysler Building, he couldn't get arrested in this town.
Yeah.
I don't remember if it actually was Al Jolson, but just making up an old timey celebrity
Yeah.
to plug in.
Yeah.
Um, and then for my third one, probably the time travel episode, just because that has um, uh, probably on the strength of Homer going back in time over and over again and killing dinosaurs and bugs and causing the butterfly effect,
Yeah.
and uh, the horrible future with Flanders as the techno overlord and
Yeah.
cutting out people's brains,
Yeah.
and the tragic near miss Homer has with the perfect life where
Yeah.
Patty and Selma are dead, he's rich, the kids are well behaved, and the drain is donuts, but he gives it up because he asks for a donut and Marge doesn't know what word he's using.
Yeah. Yeah. If he just stayed like 2 seconds longer.
Yep.
I, I I still like the part when groundskeeper Willie gets the axe in the back from Maggie, and,
Yep.
takes her pacifier. That's James Earl Jones. This is truly a disturbing universe.
Yeah, I think from the commentary that they'd had him, it was a line that was left over after he'd recorded his lines from the first Treehouse of Horror,
Right.
because he was one of the aliens in that, and I was he no he was he the house?
Um, I don't know if he was the house, but he was the mover.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, he was the
And
he might
oh,
have been the house.
and he
Yeah.
narrated the Raven for them, which is also
Right.
a real contender.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I will say anybody who's interested in writing, especially of a comedic bent, listen to the Simpsons commentary tracks if you can track down the DVDs.
Hmm.
Because one of I actually struggled about whether to include the time travel episode on there because there is a line that just falls so flat for me, especially knowing what could have been.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So one of the things that Michael X. Cohen was saying, I believe it was him, because of course on the commentary track you can't actually see the person talking. So,
Yeah.
but I think I know his voice after listening to a bunch of Simpsons and Futurama tracks.
Hmm.
Uh, he was talking about how you have to remember it was either him or Matt Groening, actually. Now that I think about it, but that's irrelevant. Whoever said it,
Yeah.
he said you have to remember that just because you get tired of a joke after you've heard it 50 times behind the scenes doesn't mean that the audience isn't going to enjoy it.
Right.
So, so there's a bit where Homer is going through time, and as he's falling through time, he says, "I'm the first non-Brazilian person to go back in time,"
Yeah.
which that line means nothing to me. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
there was some time travel movie released at the time with a Brazilian star, I guess, that the joke was a reference to.
Oh. Hmm.
That's my best half remembrance of the explanation of it from the commentary track. Um, but the original line was, "I'm the first non-fictional person to go back in time,"
Yeah.
which isn't that a better line?
Yeah. Yeah. I think so too. Yeah. And then, um, it makes more sense because I mean, because and it's a little meta thing where Homer doesn't realize that he is actually fictional.
Right. It works on multiple layers. It's funny. It's generally applicable.
Yeah.
There was no reason to switch lines.
Yeah. And then of course he had Mr. Peabody and Sherman.
Yep. Quiet you.
Quite a deal.
But yeah. So then there were a couple of bits that kind of surprised me. At one point, Homer saying that Mr. Burns' hair looked queer, which like, whoa, okay. In the episode where Homer met the gay steelworker, At one point, the guy describes himself as queer, and Homer says, "Hey, that's our word for making fun of you." And I had never thought that Homer had used that word that way in the history of the show. But I mean,
Yeah.
I guess since the um, Treehouse of Horror episodes aren't exactly in continuity,
Right. Yeah.
but still, like I didn't think he had it in him. So shows what I knew.
Yeah. And well, and we were talking about it before the show. I believe that line was cut out when it was in syndication.
Which makes it really strange that it's on Disney Plus. Which, yeah, I did use my sister's Disney Plus account to watch these episodes because it would have been a hassle to go get my DVDs one at a time and track down which disc the episodes were on. And
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so I was gonna say something else. Oh, speaking of in with not technically in continuity, but I thought it was interesting was in the cursed Krusty Doll episode, when Homer's taking a bath and he's singing "My baloney has a first name, it's Homer," and
yeah,
the Krusty Doll pops out of the water with a butcher and is chasing him with a butcher knife, and he's running through the house completely naked. And he
mhm.
runs by Marge, Patty, and Selma, and then Patty and Selma stop eating, and then Patty, who is the lesbian, says, "There goes the last lingering thread of my heterosexuality."
Well, now we know what happened.
Yes, I thought that was funny because that episode was before she came out of the closet.
Oh yeah, by a good 10 plus years.
Yeah, and then of course then there was another episode, the episode with the burlesque house. They're showing all the people walking out of the burlesque house, and Patty was one of the people walking out of the burlesque house.
Hmm.
Mm,
It's like they had a long-term plan with her.
yeah, indeed. But yeah,
I will also say, while I used it for the convenience, I cannot recommend the Disney Plus experience for The Simpsons because they did stupid things to chop it down to 16 by 9.
oh yeah, mine was in 4:3.
Are you
I think
watching on Disney Plus?
yeah. I think you can. I think there's like in the settings you can
Oh,
change it. But no, you're right about that. That was a big controversy when the show dropped on Disney Plus that they did that.
yeah, because if a joke was anywhere near the corner of the screen, goodbye joke.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the worst one was, the one when Homer and Barney do the tour of the Duff Brewery
Hmm.
with the pipe with all the
It's
beers
one
going
pipe that goes into three. What was it, like raspberry duff, duff, and no Duff dry, duff, and Duff
light.
light.
Yeah, and they're all just coming from the same pipe, but if you watched it the way you were watching it, yeah, it got cut off.
Yeah,
So it just completely ruined that joke.
yeah. There were just a lot of shots that did not fit at all.
Yeah.
Um, like when they were doing in the one where they were doing the party to set up the events where it's a Halloween party and they're passing around everything.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like there were a bunch of shots that were kind of, where you could barely see who was supposed to be in frame.
Mm,
Um,
jeez.
you know, this is my kind of horror, the type you're
Yeah.
supposed to laugh at.
Yeah, it's goofy, funny horror. Yeah, that's not necessarily scary. It's just it's fun. Yeah.
Oh, one thing I noticed I hadn't ever seen in like the probably the 15 times I saw that episode in the Shinning
Hmm.
episode. Early on, they had Homer watching a little TV,
Yeah,
and they have the Tony Awards come on, and there's a show tune starts playing in the background.
yeah,
What I noticed this time was for the first time was that it was the first few bars of their song about the fog that turns you inside out from the end of the episode
yeah. The chorus line.
parody. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Wait, who's hosting the Tony Awards? Tyne Daly and I can't remember who.
Yeah, I didn't recognize the name, so
I
and
recognize Tyne Daly, but I didn't recognize the other guy.
see, so that's where it's like the Brazilian thing is a reference that just doesn't make sense. Like I think it had to be arcane even at the time because I definitely didn't get it when I was a kid.
Yeah, yeah, and I will say that's another thing too with these old Simpsons episodes are the references are dated, and no, and anyone born after the year 2000 is probably not going to get any of them.
Yeah, and what we were talking earlier about how tight these episodes had to be. Uh, One episode ends with it turning into a Charlie Brown Christmas,
Yeah,
and maybe it was just me, but that just seemed to come the heck out of nowhere because I think the whole sequence is about 15 seconds of animation when you think about it.
yeah, and it's almost like they didn't know how to end it.
Which, not surprising. Anthology shows are always hard to frame, really.
Yeah, yeah,
It,
yeah,
how many times has Bob's Burgers done the thing where the three kids are telling a story?
yeah, yeah. That's why you kind of have to have like a wraparound um, story to kind of end it all, which they did with a few of these episodes.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, that was a great experience. That was a good suggestion.
yeah.
I'd kind of forgotten how much I love some of these.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah, the classic Simpsons is hard to beat. You know.
Yep.
Yeah,
Just do what Daniel did and fix your 16 by 9 problem if you're streaming it on Disney Plus.
exactly. Yeah. Well, I think talked these. We've exhausted these topics.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I guess as far as things we can recommend this week, mostly a thumbs up to Frasier and a double thumbs up for The Simpsons.
Yes, and thumbs down for Haunted Mansion and Otaku Elf.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it as always. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already.
Subscribe to Daniel on Twitter because if you don't like watching things on YouTube for some reason, hey,
Yeah,
no skin off our nose to stream it there too.
exactly. And hit the bell for notifications, and we'll see you next week. Good
Yep.
night, everybody.
Good night.